Hi everyone, this is D-Keys, bringing you an updated Staff Elementalist guide for PvE following the September 2014 feature pack. With the changes to Elementalist elites following the patch, I don't expect stacking Elementalists to be a thing anymore in meta parties. However, Staff Elementalists can still be useful against bosses with large hitboxes, against large groups of enemies, and in dungeons where you'll be able to quickly stack might and otherwise burn down a boss or mobs with AoEs. The core of the Staff Elementalist build involves 6 trait points in fire and 4 trait points in air. In fire, the first minor trait, Flame Barrier, gives your character a chance to inflict burning on an enemy when the enemy attacks you. Hopefully you won't be hit too much, so you won't see much use from this trait. The first major trait, Internal Fire, is a 10% damage modifier while attuned to fire. With the way this trait works, you're able to cast a spell outside of fire attunement, and then swap to fire attunement before the damage hits so that that spell can also benefit from this modifier. The second minor trait, Sunspot, inflicts damage on nearby foes when you swap to fire attunement while in combat. Since the Staff Elementalist rotation stays in fire for the most part, you will not see much benefit from this trait. The second major trait, Pyromancer's Alacrity, reduces the recharge on all your fire weapon skills. That means when using a staff, you have lower cooldowns on Lava Font, Flame Burst, Burning Retreat, and Meteor Shower. The third minor trait, Burning Rage, is another damage modifier, this one to burning foes. The Staff Elementalist does not have a lot of passive burning ability. However, with the use of Flame Burst mixed into your rotation, you can maintain a pretty high burning uptime. You only need one other person in your party, such as a Ranger, Guardian, or Engineer, to provide some burning to maintain a 100% uptime on this trait. The most powerful trait in this build, Persisting Flames, not only enables your fire fields to last longer, but also allows your blasts in a fire field to provide fury. Since the utilities that a Staff Elementalist typically take include 1 or 2 blast finishers, you can maintain high fury uptime for your group on your own. The key to the damage on this build, though, is that this trait extends your lava fonts by 2 seconds so that they last for about 6 seconds. Since they last for 6 seconds, and you cast a lava font about every 5 or 6 seconds, you'll have 100% fire field uptime. So the Staff Elementalist can do very good constant damage. In air, the first minor trait, Zephyr Speed, is a small movement speed bonus when attuned to air. Since one would typically use Signet of Air or Stack Swiftness when running long distances, you won't see much use of this trait. The first major trait, Bolt to the Heart, is a 20% damage modifier when a target is under 33% health. This means in battles that are about 30 seconds long, your second Meteor Shower will hit for some very impressive damage. The second minor trait, Electric Discharge, strikes your targeted foe with a bolt of lightning when you swap to air attunement. Since you won't often be in air attunement with the rotation for a Staff Elementalist, you will not see much use from this trait either. The second major trait, Arcane Lightning, is a bonus of 150 Ferocity for 15 seconds after you use an arcane skill. With only 2 low cooldown arcane skills, you are able to maintain 100% uptime for this trait, which is a very nice boost to your damage. After this core build of 6 in fire and 4 in air, you have many options to finish off your build. A very powerful, very well-rounded build is to put 2 more trait points in air to reach 6 trait points, and 2 points in earth. You go 2 more points in air to grab Weak Spot, which then enables all of your hits that crit to have a chance to apply vulnerability. And then for your last major trait, you have several options. A good offensive trait, especially now that Glyph of Elementals and Glyph of Lesser Elementals, as well as Glyph of Storms, all have some very good combat uses, is Quick Glyphs, which reduces the recharge on all those glyphs. For a defensive trait, you may want to pick Zephyr's Focus, which will enable you to regen some endurance while channeling Meteor Shower. Another offensive trait is Tempest Defense. To get this 20% damage modifier, you can use Frostbow 5, and then Frostbow 4 and 3 while the target is still frozen. Now that makes already a pretty powerful skill, just absolutely able to decimate things in lower level dungeons. In Earth, take Stone Splinters for another 10% damage modifier when your target is within 600 range of you. Alternatively, against targets with large hitboxes, you may want to go 2 into Arcana instead of Earth to pick up Blasting Staff. This trait makes many of your fire skills have a larger hit radius. For example, your Fireball has a slightly larger radius, your Lava Font has a much larger radius that is very noticeable, Flame Burst has a slightly larger radius, and Meteor Shower, while the overall attack AoE circle does not get any larger, the radius of each of the fireballs that fall gets larger. This means that anything that is inside that storm radius will be hit by more meteors. So for a smaller sized hitbox target, that is about 3 or 4 more meteors, but for a large hitbox target such as Loopy, that can be up to 9 or so, or even more, extra meteors. Now if you're trying to debate between the two builds 662 or 66002, I would recommend using Blasting Staff if you're going to be primarily facing large groups of targets or an enemy with a very large hitbox. Otherwise, if you're fighting single enemies that don't have very large hitboxes, go 662. If your party has vulnerability covered already so that you don't need Weak Spot, you can take only 4 points in air and then go perhaps 6, 4, 2, 2. Again, taking Stone Splinters in Earth, and taking Vital Striking in Water Magic for a 10% damage modifier while your health is above 90%. Again, instead of taking Vital Striking, you could alternatively take Blasting Staff as well. Or if you're specifically ranging an enemy, you can take Vital Striking and Blasting Staff so that you aren't bound to a 600 range away from your target. Perhaps in Pugs, if everyone is ranging at 1200 range, it is not a very good idea to be the only person at 600 range because often the enemy will aggro onto you. The recommended gear for a DPS staff elementalist is relatively straightforward. I would recommend an armor set of either full assassins or full berserkers of the best rarity that you can afford, paired with berserkers' weapons. On your armor, the highest DPS option, which is what I would recommend, is Superior Runes of the Scholar. This will give your elementalist the highest possible personal DPS possible. If you are not comfortable running Scholar's Runes, other options include Superior Runes of the Ranger, either using Glyph of Elementals and Lesser Elementals to maintain high uptime on the Ranger buff, or a mini pet. Another option is Superior Runes of the Flame Legion. With these rune sets, I would recommend a staff with a Superior Sigil of Night and Superior Sigil of Force for nighttime dungeons, and a second staff with a Superior Sigil of Frailty and Superior Sigil of Force for daytime dungeons, or as your primary weapon if you don't have the capability to have 2 staves. Also, if you particularly enjoy Staff Elementalist, you may want to supplement this with a Superior Slaying Sigil and Superior Sigil of Force for any dungeons you run frequently. An alternative setup for a Staff Elementalist, though I would not recommend it in optimized groups,
Look at this.
is a set of armor
So pretty.
with superior runes of strength, coupled with a staff with a superior sigil of strength and either superior sigil of might or force. This will enable you to maintain a very high level of personal might, but that level of might should not be necessary in those optimized groups. If stacking, I would recommend a sigil of perception, as well as putting a sigil of perception on your underwater weapon so that you don't lose the stacks if you happen to go for a quick swim or step in a puddle. For trinkets, use Berserker's trinkets of the best rarity that you can afford. An Elementalist will spend most of his or her time in fire attunement. The combat skills you'll be using are Lava Font, which is a 4, or when traded, 6-second fire field. Flame Burst, which applies burning to your target and nearby enemies. Burning Retreat, which, while nerfed, is still a very useful evade. And Meteor Shower, which is a very large, very damaging AoE. You'll often start combat in Earth Attunement, with an eruption that you'll place down underneath your enemy as a target for your fire field afterwards. Your combat utilities will be Arcane Brilliance, which is a slight heal, an even better heal if it hits targets, that will act as a blast finisher in your fire field, as well as proc Arcane Lightning. I recommend Signet of Fire for the extra 180 precision, and Arcane Wave as your second arcane skill to maintain that 100% Arcane Lightning uptime, as well as a second blast finisher. Using Arcane Brilliance and Arcane Wave will enable you to maintain about 4.5 stacks of might and 100% uptime on Arcane Lightning. Your third utility slot can vary between several options. A very popular option is Conjure Frostbow. What one can do is conjure it after stacking might, then use Frostbow 5 to disable an enemy for about 5 seconds while you and your party mates safely DPS using Frostbow 4, Frostbow 3 in melee range, and then your standard DPS rotation. Other options include Glyph of Storms. With the recent feature pack, it has a couple of new functionalities. Sandstorm is relatively unchanged and can maintain blindness on a group of trash mobs.
Glorious air.
The Lightning Storm from Air Attunement got the largest buff, with a ability to basically stack 25 stacks of vulnerability when starting with this. Since it has 36 impacts and each will hit a few foes, you can get 25 stacks of vulnerability on a group of mobs within about 3 or 4 seconds. Again, if a battle lasts long enough and your Glyph of Storms comes off cooldown,
Ferocious fire.
casting in Fire Attunement for the extra damage is a good idea. Some defensive options that you may want to take if you're uncomfortable with this build, or in a more difficult combat situation, include Arcane Shield, which will block 3 attacks over 5 seconds, as well as proc Arcane Lightning when you start the skill. Armor of Earth if you need stability. Lightning Flash if you are uncomfortable with meleeing a particular encounter and want an easy out. And Mist Form, which will make you invulnerable for 3 seconds, which will help you get out of sticky situations or res teammates in dangerous situations. If you're wanting a better heal, I would normally recommend Glyph of Elemental Harmony for this build, especially if you're using 6 trait points in air. In battles where you'll have many conditions, use Ether Renewal, though it's usually hard to get the full channel off before dodging again. For your elite, I would usually recommend Glyph of Elementals. With a feature patch, you have a little bit more control over these elementals now. If you want a DPS option, I would recommend the Fire Elemental for encounters where the elemental won't likely be damaged, or the Air Elemental in fights where in melee they may sustain a lot of damage. Alternatively, you can cast this in Earth for a very useful face tank that can pull aggro off of most Berserker Guardians. While Tornado is no longer a useful DPS boost for the Staff Elementalist, it still can be used for controlling groups of non-champion and non-legendary enemies. So, for example, at the last encounter in the uncategorized fractal, you can more or less keep the 4 golems pinned down, and you can safely DPS them. You can also use Dust Tornado, once transformed, to blind mobs, as well as Debris Tornado to knock down additional enemies. You also gain stability while transformed.
Ferocious fire!
For consumables for a Staff Elementalist, I would recommend a plate of truffle steak for the additional power and precision, or, if that is not affordable, Minotaur steaks. While seaweed salad and its cheaper counterpart are theoretically higher effective power, you'll not see the benefit from this while channeling Meteor Shower. So I would just recommend using something that doesn't depend on you being able to move. For utility consumables, I would recommend an appropriate slaying potion. If there is not an appropriate slaying potion, use either toxic sharpening stones or toxic maintenance oil. Or if your party is not reaching 25 vulnerability, even after you trait for 6 in air, use Scale Venom. The Staff Elementalist rotation is relatively simple. Begin in Earth and cast Eruption underneath your target. If using Glyph of Storms, swap to Air Attunement and quickly cast it before swapping to Fire Attunement to put down your lava font. This Glyph of Storms will enable you to put 25 stacks of vulnerability on an enemy, so that your party can be quickly at full buffs. Then use Arcane Brilliance and Meteor Shower before putting down another lava font and starting to auto-attack. Use 4 auto-attacks to every 1 lava font, and if the enemy does not have burning applied to it, use Flame Burst to apply that burning in place of 1 fireball in your rotation. When your Arcane Lightning buff goes away, use either Arcane Brilliance or Arcane Wave to refresh that buff. Once Glyph of Storms is off cooldown, you may cast it in Fire Attunement in place of a fireball for additional DPS. Also, remember to summon your Earth Elemental if you're at a difficult battle, or Fire Elemental for easier battles where the extra DPS will be useful. When Meteor Shower is off cooldown, start with a lava font again, then Arcane Brilliance and Meteor Shower before continuing your Fireball rotation. If using Tornado, use it after your initial burst for optimal DPS. Outside of combat, a Staff Elementalist also has many useful skills. Before a long trash run, an Elementalist can use Air 5 Static Field for a lightning field so that you and your party mates can stack swiftness. You can either follow this up with Windborne Speed immediately after for all the swiftness you can provide, or you can save the skill for the trash run in case you or a nearby party mate is crippled, immobilized, or chilled. Also, you can use Gust to push away nearby foes, however, this will put you in combat. In water, an Elementalist has 1 heal from Geyser, which is also a water field, as well as 1 heal with condition removal in Healing Rain. You can also use Frozen Ground to slow down enemies, however this will also put you in combat. In fire, you can use Burning Retreat after about facing, so that you can cover a short distance very quickly. However, if an enemy runs over that trail, you'll be put in combat. And finally, in Earth, you can use Unsteady Ground, which is Earth 4, for a line of warding, which will prevent foes from crossing it for a few seconds. As well, you can immobilize foes using Shockwave. However, since both of these skills affect foes, they will also put you in combat. For running skills, if you don't need the blast finishers, you can take Ether Renewal for more condition removal, or Glyph of Elemental Harmony for additional swiftness. I would recommend putting on Signet of Air, just in case your swiftness runs out. And if you need additional defensive utilities, you can use Mist Form to get through a particularly sticky section, or Lightning Flash so that you can get out of a large group of mobs, or even sometimes take some shortcuts. Also, you can use Conjure Fiery Greatsword. Since its damage has been very much reduced in combat situations, you can use Fiery Greatsword 3, Fiery Whirl, and 4, our favorite Fiery Rush, to quickly cover ground. Of course, if you hit an enemy, you'll be put in combat, but with the low cooldown on these skills, and since these skills ignore some control effects, such as Cripple and Chill, you'll be able to quickly run away from whatever may be pursuing you. That's it for now for the Staff Elementalist. Thanks for watching.